Spider-Man fans have been getting treated great lately within the past couple of years. With the amazing Into the Spider-Verse film, Spider-Man PS4, the potential live-action Spider-Verse coming to the big screen with hopefully all 3 live-action Spider-Man teaming up, and now the Miles Morales spin-off game finally being released on both the PS4 and PS5, Spider-Man content just keeps coming and coming. With the Into the Spider-Verse movie making the Spider-Verse and alternate Spider-Man a more mainstream concept, it's definitely nothing new. I first learned of alternate Spider-Man when I was young, watching Spider-Man the Animated Series, where they had a bunch of clones of Peter Parker, and I was like, nice. Then around the same time, I played Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, which introduced me to characters such as Spider-Man 2099 and Spider-Man Noir, who I will get to later. We've also had comics such as SpiderMen, where Peter Parker and Miles Morales met for the first time, and we've had wicked cool events such as Spider-Verse and Spider-Geddon, where we saw a whole multiverse full of spider people. So in today's video, I'm going to be discussing some cool alternate Spider-Man that you may or may not have heard of. I'll start with mentioning some Spider-Man that may be more familiar to all of you, starting with Miles Morales. I just talked about him in my Marvel Legacy Characters video, and his popularity has risen a ton with him being in the movie Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and having his own video game, but I just felt the need to mention him. Miles Morales originated in the Ultimate Universe and became Spider-Man after Peter Parker died fighting the Green Goblin. He originally didn't want to be Spider-Man, but was truly affected by Peter's death, which he saw firsthand, so he became the new Spider-Man of the Ultimate Universe. He has since then joined the main Marvel Comics continuity, being Earth 616, but he had previously met Peter Parker and fought alongside the main Spider-Man in the event SpiderMen. Miles is a great character, and like I stated earlier, his popularity is only increasing more and more. Next up, we have Spider-Man Noir and Spider-Man 2099. Spider-Man Noir is a version of Peter Parker from the 1930s who became Spider-Man after his Uncle Ben was brutally murdered and became a dark, no pun intended, version of Spider-Man who didn't mind putting criminals down. You guys would be great friends. Then we have Spider-Man 2099, who is named Miguel O'Hara and is the Spider-Man of the year 2099, where he fights the corporation Alchemax. The reason I put Spider-Man Noir and Spider-Man 2099 together was because, like I stated earlier, I was first introduced to them in the game Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, and then sometime later I played Spider-Man Edge of Time, where I got to know Spider-Man 2099 even more. Spider-Man Noir isn't the only Spider-Man who isn't afraid to kill his enemies, however. Last Stand Spider-Man is from a world where he killed Kraven the Hunter and got kicked out of the Avengers, and in turn became a more violent anti-hero rather than the friendly neighborhood hero. He's got a cool leather jacket outfit though. Another weird version of Peter Parker that you guys got to know recently is Peter Porker, aka Spider-Ham. He was a spider bitten by a pig named May Porker, God, why am I saying all this out loud, who is a mad scientist that went a little crazy after inventing an atomic hairdryer, and biting him caused him to turn into a pig that kept his spider powers. All I gotta say is John Mulaney was a perfect casting for this character. Before I get into more versions of Spider-Man, I want to briefly go over a couple of SpiderWomen that I think are awesome. First, we have Gwen Stacy, also known as Spider-Gwen. We all know the infamous death of Gwen Stacy at the hands of the Green Goblin, but in her dimension being Earth 65, she was bitten by a radioactive spider and becomes Spider-Woman. Meanwhile, Peter Parker ends up becoming the Lizard, and he eventually dies, with that being her Uncle Ben moment, as you will, and she uses his death to further motivate her as a hero. The other Spider-Woman I want to mention is Silk. Cindy Moon was a student who got bitten by the same radioactive spider that bit Peter Parker, and in turn got spider abilities like he did, except she also got organic webbing, unlike Peter, who made his web fluid. It wasn't until the original Sin storyline where Peter learns of her existence and he rescues her from being locked up by Ezekiel. After discovering her family has moved away, she takes a job at the Fact Channel news station and uses those resources to find her family. Both of these characters are still fairly new, but they're great nonetheless. Back to some more versions of Spider-Man. One of the most interesting versions of the character is the Superior Spider-Man. The Superior Spider-Man was the main Spider-Man for some time, except it's not really Peter Parker, it's Otto Octavius. Right before he died, he swapped his mind with Peter, and for a time, he was Spider-Man, although he still had some supervillain traits such as being more violent than Peter and even having henchmen. Do you guys like punk music? I like punk music. I also like Spider-Punk. Hobart Brown, who is the Prowler on the main Earth 616 universe, is Spider-Punk. He is the Spider-Man in a world where Norman Osborn is president. Yikes. And Spider-Punk leads a revolution against him. And his suit is so freaking cool. He's got the denim, the spiked mohawk, he's got it all. You guys know how I love zombie stories. I can't make this video about alternate Spider-Man without mentioning Zombie Spider-Man. He's a bit interesting because while he is a human devouring zombie, he still has his Peter Parker personality and feels tons of guilt for eating Aunt May and Mary Jane. Damn. Anyways, here's Ben Reilly, who is a clone of Peter who was grown in a lab by the Jackal and became the Scarlet Spider. If you guys had powers, would you want to get rid of them? Peter sure did. And after he tried drinking a formula to get rid of his powers, he ended up growing 4 extra arms and becoming 6-armed Spider-Man. He ended up being pretty powerful with his extra set of limbs, and they ended up being extremely useful. I just remember 6-armed Spider-Man from the Spider-Man animated series, and it used to really creep me out as a kid. The last alternate version of Spider-Man I want to mention today is the Cosmic Spider-Man. Cosmic Spider-Man is a version of Spider-Man where he basically became Captain Universe and was godlike, so of course he was very powerful and very arrogant, might I add. So that's just some of the alternate Spider-Men found in the Marvel multiverse. I of course didn't mention all of them, and if you want to see more alternate versions of Spider-Man, I suggest reading Spider-Verse and Spider-Geddon. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and let me know down below who your favorite version of Spider-Man is. If you like the content, subscribe to the channel, and as always, stay awesome and support your local comic book shops.